The Impact Founders is a subset of the Luxembourg Mind podcast series. And we will talk with the entrepreneurs who are based in Luxembourg and who have impact and long-term value creation as part of their core business. Today, we will dive into the world of Elisabeth Villeminot. She's a founder and the CEO of a company called the Sublime Terroir. The company is doing a wine brokerage, so connecting local producers in France with the international audience. And today we will dive into her world where impact is very tangible and where she really talks about long-term relationships and long-term value creation. Let's dive in.
Hey, Alina.
Hello, Elisabeth.
How
Good to
are
see
you?
you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you for having us
Of
in your
course.
beautiful office.
Thank you. Welcome. Want to have a seat?
Thank you, Elisabeth. It's great to be in your very beautiful office. I love being here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for thinking of me for this.
Let's start with your path, your life path, your career path, which are very much going together. So I know that you have a very fascinating work story going from working in La Pergola, a very famous 3 Michelin star restaurant in Rome, run by a German. And then you went into the sommelier and wine brokerage. Would you like to tell us more about what was the driving force behind those decisions?
Yeah, it's somehow, for some reason, when I was 14, I had this idea that I wanted to have a restaurant. I don't know where it came from, but it was a drive. And so from 14 up until after the Pergola, I wanted to work in restaurants. Anyone who would have me on all my holidays, all my vacations, weekends, just anyone who would teach me how to cook. So I worked for different companies, and I ended up at the Pergola at the time when Heinz Beck, the chef, had 1 star. And then the sommelier there was a friend of mine, and he said, you know, you should really learn about wine because it'll always be helpful for any kind of restaurant you may have. I was like, okay. So I took a sommelier course there, and I loved it. And I then never went back to professional cooking and became a sommelier. And yeah, that's how it happened.
Would you like to tell us more about how you went into the wine brokerage then from the sommelier profession, and why didn't you stay in the sommelier profession?
So the sommelier profession, actually the pairing of food and wine is my favorite part of the business, because I feel like you can take 2 really extraordinary things and make something even more magical. It's sort of like a firework experience. It's still one of my favorite things to do, but it's I don't really know how the transition was, but I met my husband, who had a brokering business in Paris, and I worked with him for 10 years in Paris, and then he wanted to step away from the running of the business, and I had never really wanted to take over, but when he did that, I said, okay, I'll take over, and that's when we moved the company to Luxembourg, and I took it in a different direction.
I love how you say about each thing leading to another, not in a very linear way, but more as a thought. I thought about this and I dreamed about that, and then I learned how to pair food and wine, and then I went and you met your husband. So you ended up in Luxembourg. Why have you made this decision? What is Luxembourg for you?
When I decided to take over, I knew I didn't want to be in Paris anymore. I was born in Paris. Paris is my city. I love Paris. But I didn't want to be running my company there with a small child. I had a 2-year-old at the time. And so I went looking at other options for countries and places. And I didn't know Luxembourg at the time, but I visited it because it was one of the neighboring countries. And I said, well, I might as well visit. And I thought it was fantastic. And I loved it. And it's geographically makes so much sense for me. It's in the center of Europe. I'm 2-hour drive to Champagne, 3 hours to Burgundy on the car, and then the train. My parents still live in Paris, so it's really easy to get there. And I love Luxembourg. It's funny because it's not the obvious choice for me necessarily, but it corresponds to who I am. It's such an international place, and I feel really at home in an international community. I don't feel 100% French or 100% American or 100% anything. I feel international. And so when I go in Luxembourg to any kind of circumstance, there are people like me. And I like that.
We'll talk later about this because I'm really curious to know more about your international background. There are many international families here with kids coming from international families as well, being raised here with languages. We're very privileged to be in this background.
Absolutely.
And also raising our kids. And if you would be giving an advice to another entrepreneur to set up in Luxembourg, what would you say exactly about running the business here?
I think there's a lot of advantages. I think Luxembourg as a country has some preconceived ideas. There's a lot of people that think a lot of things about Luxembourg without actually knowing how it happens. Luxembourg is pretty straightforward. There's a lot of positive things, but being an entrepreneur is challenging anywhere. And even though I feel like Luxembourg makes it a little bit easier, definitely easier than France, there's still challenges. It's not that it's just everything easy.
So what are the challenges then of running business as an entrepreneur, and what are the challenges for Luxembourg? Where should we be looking?
I don't know if that's a specific Luxembourg thing. I think, creating a team is challenging sort of anywhere.
What is I think, yes, we often talk, and when I talk to other entrepreneurs or just people actually working in the big companies with the big brand names, that should be supposedly easier to attract talents. And it's a constant conversation for Luxembourg that it's not so easy to attract people here. How do you see this challenge, and what probably can be possible solutions for that, if you know some?
I think it's two things. I think an entrepreneur has their own journey for finding a team. I mean, I didn't study HR. So when I'm hiring people, it's a learning process for me. And so I had to learn a lot of things to actually find and recruit the best people. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. So I've, also had to learn how to fire people, which I didn't know how to do, which is one of my least favorite things to do. But you have to learn how to do that. And then I think knowing more about what you really need, and being honest with yourself about how much you're actually going to delegate, what you really need someone else to do, and then finding that right person. But that just takes time. I think it takes time. But I think it's almost 50% the work that the entrepreneur needs. I work with a business coach to help me, to coach me through the challenges, because especially as closely related the business is to my life, the challenges and blockages that come up are sometimes personal. And it's like, oh, this is a fear. This is something that, is holding me back. And then how can I need to overcome this to then get to that professionally.
Obviously, as a coach as well, I can't resist to ask, what kind of leader are you? So what do you see your leadership features?
You might want to ask my staff about that. I don't like to micromanage. I want to trust my team. But I also have, I think this is another aspect of what we'll talk about at some point, but so much of what we do is relationships. And managing relationships is something that takes a long time to delegate. And so that kind of thing is more like, we have to see a long picture. It's a marathon, not a sprint, that to pass this sort of complicity, understanding of where someone else, what their needs are, what they need, how they can best do what we need them to do, and help them. That kind of thing. You can't just write it down. This is what happens. You have to experience it. And so it takes a while, I think, for someone to understand those relationships. But once they do, then they can really be useful to you, like as a team.
Amazing. So it's like dancing, learning to dance with the clients.
Yeah. And trusting and knowing too that mistakes are part of life. And, when someone does make a big mistake, which happens, I take everyone, I'm not pointing a finger, but how can we all learn from this, including me? I mean, I learn every day. I do things every day that I've never done before, and sometimes it's terrifying. Most of the times it's terrifying. But I think if we can so this happened. Why did it happen? What was the consequences? And then how can we all collectively learn from this and help each other out so it doesn't happen again?
And it's amazing because if you think about the world today, right, there is so much unknown and so many new patterns and things and events are happening that usually you just don't have the answer. So getting this collective knowledge is really a great way of actually caring for people, but also letting them learn and dare in something they haven't done before, right? Yes.
I think you have to trust people, but you also have to trust that, I mean, how you learn is also by making a mistake. Once you make a mistake, you're never going to do that again because you saw what happened. It makes more sense. And it's the same thing with my son. I mean, you know.
I thought about my son as well.
I always tell him, okay, here's what happened. Yeah. If you learn something, I have no problem with what happened. But if you do it again and again and again, then there's something that, you know, we need to work on that's deeper.
Yeah, so this really working on the mistake to get better next time.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The other thing I think is really important relative to my team is I want us to all be in person. And I know this is a contentious subject. And as a woman, I understand that flexibility is important and I try and be as flexible as I can, but I really feel like we work better in person. So that's a really big point for me.
Yeah, I think nothing compares to being together and having this energy of working and learning and collaborating together.
And you see when other people are struggling and you can jump in. If you're just on a phone, you can't see all the things that are happening. And I think that's really, really important.
Great point. Let's move to impact. I know impact is a very important part of your work. We've talked about this before. There's an impact of employing people and actually being responsible for them. There's also an impact for how you care for the producers, wine producers, and what actually also their impact on the terroir where they're present, right? Would you like to talk more about that? What does it mean for you?
Well, I think there's so many levels to that. The grower has an impact on the earth. I mean, one of the things I love about wine is it's an agricultural product. This is an earth product. We depend on nature for it. The more we respect the nature, the better the nature is back to us. And so that's really important. And the growers that we work with are not systematically organic, or they don't necessarily have to be in a certain kind of, you know, box or mold, but they all treat their vineyards like their garden and they all respect them. And so they know their plots. You can see their hands have actually been in the vines. You know, this is important. This is the contact with the earth. It's not always easy. I mean, we've had a series of challenging vintages with weather patterns that are changing, and it's making it really complicated for some of the growers to, you know, to know what to do because it's so different every year. But then I think the impact is also with the community that we end up building with the relationships that we have with our growers. And I go into the vineyards with them to understand what their challenges are. I go into their cellars with them to understand what are the things. There's technical production things, and then there's also logistical things like, okay, one grower doesn't have space if the customer doesn't ship the wine right away. He doesn't have space to even walk around in because some cellars are really small. So all those kind of logistics things that you understand over time so that you can help people. But relationships aren't something you can compress. It's not something you can't buy time. You have to take the time to listen, spend the time to talk, spend the time doing the thing. And I think that's one of the most challenging things, because sometimes I feel like every day is a marathon and I wish I could just compress my time. But that part is uncompressible. I have to spend the time. I mean, it's not that I have to, I want to, because that's actually where the quality is.
Beautiful. How do you see the impact of your company, which is called Sublime Terroir? How do you see the impact your company is making in Luxembourg, actually?
Well, our interaction in Luxembourg as Sublime, so we have two companies. I was going to get into that. So Sublime Terroir is our main company. The actual interaction in Luxembourg is quite minimal because we're a service-based company, so we represent growers for their export markets. So we're sort of an international office for these growers who want to be in their vineyards and in their cellar. Our second company is Sublime Sélection, and it serves some Luxembourg clients. where we have stock.
So how do you see, because I know that you really know the wine, you really go for the high quality, so and also there are so many options on the market, right? What is your niche? How do you see your role actually in, I don't know, educating the market?
I think education is a really big thing, a big component, and I'm working on how we can do that better here in Luxembourg. There's a couple of key things. First of all, taste. I cannot sell a wine I don't want to drink myself. I just can't. It's not in my DNA. If I don't like it, I'm going to tell the grower, I'm not going to necessarily say I don't like it, but I'm going to say, this doesn't fit what we're trying to do, and maybe try this or something because this our clients will want this. And then the other thing is the quality of how it's made. All our wines are artisanal wines, and they're often this may be a little technical, but they're often non-filtered, non-fined, and so that just gives it's sort of like having a non-pasteurized cheese. It just gives an extra layer of authenticity and texture sometimes to the wines that make them, unique. That doesn't mean that no one else can do that. It's just this is what we focus on.
I also can hear that from what you are saying, that actually bringing those producers that maybe are less known, that are not industrial, right? That are maybe
they're very artisanal. Yeah.
Bringing and opening the markets to them, which probably necessarily they won't be able to do themselves.
Some people can do it, but then they don't know who to trust. They don't know if they're going to get paid. They don't know if the wines are going to be treated well. A lot for our export markets, everything's refrigerated, door to door. That's really important, because if someone makes he spends 1 year in the vineyard, 1 year in the cellar, and then the wine goes on a non-refrigerated container through the Panama Canal, everything he's worked for is lost. And so you need to have that quality and that follow-up, which is what we do all the time to make sure we're checking that everything. Now we work with trusted partners, but we're always making sure that there's no corners that are cut, so that the quality that the grower is really trying to make is delivered to the consumer.
So it's really keeping the quality at the center.
Yeah.
Quality of relationships.
Yeah. And quality of product.
Quality of product, making sure that's the quality that you want to work
Right.
for, and actually selling what you believe in, right?
Right.
And then offering them your expertise and quality of refrigerated supply chain that offers then an excellent quality product
Exactly.
to people really far
and then
away.
There's also a whole bunch of compliance stuff, all these label regulations for each country, you have analysis for some country, and so all of that can be really daunting for someone who doesn't know, how to enter in a market. So all that kind of stuff we handle.
What are the countries that you work with?
So US is our biggest one, and then Canada and Japan are the second, and then we do Philippines, UK, and Australia.
Okay, really far away.
Yeah.
So if I think about culture of negotiation between France, US, and Japan,
Very
with
different.
UK and Australia somewhere in the middle, that would be on the opposite sides of the scales of the cultural negotiation skills. How do you bridge that?
Thinking about it sometimes scares me, because I feel like if you overthink it, then it's not right. The US one comes more easily to me because I'm half American, so that part's easy to me. Even though the Americans can be, they have their own challenges in negotiating. Japan, I've learned to be more understanding of their culture, but I think ultimately it comes down to the communication and how, if you show up with sincerity and honesty, even if there's a problem, okay, here's the problem, here's what we can do about it, here's what we can't do about it, what would you prefer? How can we work around these things? And if you show up with this kind of open heart and open mind, I think the cultural stuff can not be as important.
What have you learned about Japan and negotiations there?
Well, all of the cultures need to be listened to. Everyone needs you to listen. And I think that's a skill that is really important. And I practice that. And then the Japanese need things to be clear. I like clarity, so that's easy. And then the Japanese also want things to be perfect. Everything, the whole packaging has to be absolutely perfect. Everything has to be very meticulous. So respecting that and sort of, if you know about it ahead of time, then you can prepare for it and it's okay.
It's really beautiful the way you describe it, yes. Speaking about negotiations, I assume, but correct me if I'm wrong, that the wine business is very male-dominated. So probably wine brokerage is even more, but the growers are usually managing those male figures running the businesses. How do you find your space, your style, remaining who you are in this context?
It's challenging. The wine business has changed since I've been in it. There's many more women, even winemakers that are more women. At first, I found it really, really hard. At first, I was often the only woman and the only woman under the age of 30. Now that's no longer the case, of course. But like, I remember when I first got started that I was just very much isolated as a woman. Now I feel more confident because I also have more experience and more, I don't know, confidence. And there's also more women. But yeah, I feel like just showing up as yourself. I feel like sometimes I can be even stronger. Stronger isn't necessarily the right word, but people don't always expect a woman to show up in the way I do. And strong isn't necessarily aggressive. It's just, confident.
Confident, firm.
Yeah, confident, firm, and but also understanding. There's like a balance to find there.
So for young women that are going to the space that are male-dominated, what would you give as an advice or a suggestion?
I think somehow the balance between keeping the femininity, which is, great, but having the strength to not feel it when people put you down, or not listen when people try and stop you from stuff. It's a hard balance to find. I don't always hit it right.
Yeah, but I'm sure you know what you're talking about, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, there are days when I go, wow, that was hard. And sometimes I think, gosh, if I'd been a man, maybe this conversation would have been very different. You have to be really good at what you do.
Professionalism is important.
Yeah.
I can also hear a theme about actually being authentic and knowing who you are and showing up as you are. It came in your leadership, it came in your negotiations, it came in your working with the growers, and it comes in your, how you embrace actually who you are and then live in the world as it is. It's clearly your...
Well, a few times I remember showing up in a way that I thought people wanted me to show up. And I realized, I was like, that's just not who I am. And then I didn't feel good. And so sometimes if I feel myself sort of slipping into something the way I feel like someone wants me to be, then I'm like, just be yourself, just be yourself. And it may not be perfect. It may be awkward. I may say the wrong thing, but at least I'm going to come at it with my heart and not something where it's like something that I'm trying to be that actually isn't authentic.
Yeah. Beautiful. So how do you see the development of the wine business? I can imagine a few challenges like climate change, tariffs wars, the supply chain disruptions. I'm sure there are much more you as insider can see. So what's the future there?
I mean, climate change is huge. It's really huge. It's happening everywhere. It's having a really big impact on how the growers can manage things. And it for instance, last year, 2024, we had a really small harvest in Burgundy. I'm just using Burgundy as an example, but some of our growers lost up to 90% of their crop, which is just gigantic. But the costs involved in producing that vintage are very close to producing a big vintage. They have the same costs because they still have to treat the vines, they still have to go prune them, they still have to harvest whatever's there. They still have to do a certain number of things that they can't not do. And so the fact that the costs stay the same, but the product, the actual product is not there, it is a really big problem for them, which means that pricing gets weird. Because in order to make up for that loss of product, they have to increase their prices. Some people have exaggerated, absolutely, but I think it's really challenging for them. I also think that the average consumer expects a higher quality wine today than they did 30 years ago. And so we come as consumers, we also come, but we want the price to stay the same. And that's just not possible. All the costs have gone up for the growers, labor costs, everything from glass to paper, everything's gone up. And so we can't expect them to not increase their prices. Again, some people have totally exaggerated and put pricing that is unsustainable. But I think the average wine now, for something good, I mean, for instance, for the wines we sell, I don't taste things that I would want to sell myself, that I would like to drink for less than 10 euros. I just don't. And of course you can find some. I get emails from people trying to sell me stuff for less, and I'm like, I don't know how you're doing it, because in order to just take care of the things you need to do, take care of the vineyard, you actually can't do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. It goes always back to education, right? In the sense that you have to educate yourself where your money go, how this was produced, who is benefiting on.
Right.
And if you want equality, then you need to still educate yourself, but spend the money wisely, and not expect something excellent at a very cheap price because there's something that is not.
And they're farmers. I mean, they need to live. Yeah. They need to, they need to put food on the table too, and that's normal.
No, but it's also amazing that behind the fancy bottle of wine, very often there is a family of farmers living, and actually all the connected microsystem living around this farm. So it's a very, as you said, there is the soil on the hands, and you can see it, probably even the color of the soil.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. I know that you have a kid. We talked, we talked about that. How do you maintain your energy? Because I know you work a lot. You are very present as a mother. You travel a lot. Where's your energy sources? How do you keep the balance?
It's challenging. I'm not sure I always do it right, but I try. My priority is my son. He's 14. I know he's not going to be with me at the house forever, so that's my number one. Work is obviously very important, but if I have to choose between the two, I choose my son. That's number one, they're very clear in my mind. And second of all, I try and do exercise, I try and eat healthily and work on my spirit. I'm quite spiritual, so also like nurturing that sort of inner energy, so that doesn't get forgotten. But it's a work in progress.
And what I hear as well, knowing actually what you want is super important, and listening to yourself again, so the quality of attention.
Yeah.
That's the theme that clearly comes through the conversation that we're having.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to be present, be present. Yeah. Really important.
You are a typical third culture kid, right? With parents between the cultures, also very different cultures. We're in a country where we have lots of third culture kids. So that's the term, actually, kids not being raised, raised, or spending an important part of their life outside of their home cultures, we could say it. How do you embrace it? Maybe what kind of advice would you give to parents that are still trying to figure out what's the best way to go about that?
I don't think there's one best way. I mean, I think being comfortable without fitting into a box of one culture and one country is a work in progress. Sometimes I feel alone. I mean, I actually feel more foreign in my home. Like if I go back to France, I sometimes actually feel more foreign. Then when I'm here, I feel more French, It's so funny because it's like, how can I actually feel foreign when I'm home? But then I don't really know where home is. Actually, the apartment I live in Luxembourg is the place I've lived the most in my whole life. 12 years. So in one place.
Okay, that's home probably, yeah.
So, I mean, I lived longer actually in Paris, but not in the same place. I feel like embracing, when people ask me where I'm from, I usually just say planet Earth because I feel like if they want to know more, then I can go into more details. But yeah, I feel more like an earthling than from a specific country.
So that's the way to go
about
it. Yes. Okay. Look, we'll do the rapid fire round. I'll ask you questions where you can give very short answers. So your favorite venue to hang out in Luxembourg City?
Oh, there's so many good ones. So many. For really great grower champagne, I love the Flûte à l'Or. They have a really fantastic selection of small grower champagnes that I really love. I love the Fin Gourmand, which is right here, back here. There's so many great. I like Bazar. I like the Place. Yeah, I like a lot. There's so many great places.
Great.
I never get tired. I never get tired of going out in Luxembourg.
Some good recommendations to try for me as well. A book you suggest to read about food and wine?
So I've been reading this one by Andrew Jefford just now, and it's really great. It's sort of philosophical musings about wine and how you connect with it. I like that.
Beautiful. I definitely recommend your book.
Okay.
I was reading it and I found that for someone who wants to learn more about wine in a very easy way, it's really a great book to read.
Yeah, I feel like some people get intimidated by wine. And that's why I wanted to write that book, because I feel like wine's one of these things that's like, oh, I don't know anything. And so then you don't even want to learn because it's just like, it's too huge. So if you start something simple and then you get a few sort of things that you can wrap your head around, then you can build on that.
Great. What's one grape variety, wine region, or winemaker that you believe is undervalued?
Well, actually, funny you ask, because that's the one I want to taste. It's a Beaujolais Nouveau, which is actually the first wine that's released every year in France. And it's made with a grape variety called, it's Gamay, the Gamay grape variety. And it's a grape variety that resembles Pinot Noir, but it's got a little more acidity. And for me, it's like a wintertime rosé. You keep it in the fridge, you pull it out, it goes with everything. But a lot of people, Beaujolais has a really bad reputation because of the Nouveau. It was just mass-produced, sold everywhere. Everyone said it gave them a headache, and then they used these yeast that tasted like bananas, so everyone thought, oh, it just tastes like bananas and it's terrible. But there's so many growers in Beaujolais who work for the passion because they don't earn any money from working in these Beaujolais wines. All their significant others have serious jobs to put food on the table because you can't earn money selling Beaujolais. So I always push it forward, and this is what we're working on today.
And again, there's an impact sector there, so that you think about the growers and you're not thinking about, okay, it's a nice wine, or I think, yes, that's where the money should go as well of the consumers. Amazing. Yeah, that's
I feel like it's the kind of wine that it's friendly, and it's not complicated, and it's to share. The wine is meant to share. That's the most important thing.
Is there a wine that you're still dreaming to have in your cellar?
No, I as long as I can share it with friends, I have everything I need.
And if you'd write another book, what would it be about?
I'd like to write one about some of the people that I work with. Yeah, the things that I've learned from them.
Is this on the plan?
Yeah, actually it is.
Okay, I'll be looking forward to it.
Okay.
Okay, so we've discussed Beaujolais and you...
So today happens to be a day that my team and I have made a blend of Beaujolais Nouveau with a grower that we work with. And so he has different plots of land that he vinifies in different tanks. And he's sent us 4 tanks that we've then tried. And we made a blend of 50 hectoliters so that he can serve our clients with it. So he's going to then blend the wine, bottle it, and ship it to our customers. We've been doing this blend for him for 25 years, and he always likes the blend we make. So he's the typical kind of grower who's really comfortable in his vineyards and in the cellar, but not so comfortable tasting. Just because you're born a winemaker doesn't mean that you're necessarily good at every single aspect of the whole process. So that's where we also have a role to play.
Excellent. Professional tasting, I'm assuming there's restaurants or wine shops coming here to you.
So today it was just me and my team making this blend, and then the final product will sell to different people.
Okay, very interesting. I'm curious to test with you.
Okay, so we'll taste the first 2. So this one, basically what's interesting is that each plot of land can give different kind of experience. So this... Well, you'll see. You taste it and tell me. But depending on the exposure and the actual depth of the soil, then you can get a different kind of wine. It's the same grape variety, all 4 of the same grape variety, picked in the same week. vinified in the same way. Everything's the same except for the plot of land. So it's also interesting to see like how these things are different.
Interesting.
So Beaujolais Nouveau is supposed to be a very fruit-forward wine. This one I feel like it's also very floral. I like it's supposed to pop a little bit in the glass.
It does, yes. I feel I'm not a good wine tester in the sense that I'm.
So when you're tasting, the first thing you want to look at is the color. Okay, this is like super purple. It's so fresh and young. It's still grapey, you know. And then the reason you swirl it in the glass is to sort of liberate some of the volatile aromas that can come out. So then you get a better smell. And so what you're looking for, and this is where like tasting notes and what's interesting is what kind of fruit is it? I mean, the tasting notes that just tell you every kind of fruit is really not interesting. The point about tasting note is to see, okay, is it fresh fruit? Is it cooked fruit? Because then it'll mean like it's a different kind of vintage. Because if it's cooked fruit, then it'll be a very warm vintage. Whereas if it's really fresh fruit, then you can see it's like a cooler vintage. And then like, is it very floral? Has it been, if it's really like tannic, then it's been extracted. Like all those tasting notes are going to tell you something about how the wine was made and where it came from. It's not a finished wine. Okay, so it's not. It's also, because it's not bottled, it has a little bit of bubbles that protects the wine. So it's a natural protection of the wine. It's a byproduct of fermentation, so it's naturally in the wine, and it preserves it. But it's a little funny when you taste it.
Yeah. What would you pair? Because you said pairing food and wine is your favorite area. How you would pair this wine?
I mean, for me, Beaujolais is the ultimate apéritif with charcuterie, maybe some cheese. It goes great with sushi. It's so great. What else? I mean, Beaujolais isn't easy to pair because of the acidity. It goes with a lot of different things.
So let's move back to your entrepreneurship experience. Beaujolais is a new wine, and you can say lots of fantastic things about Beaujolais and also how to pair it with food and, make it a success. What would you suggest to new entrepreneurs, maybe go into the wine business? What would be your advice about that, and maybe some misconceptions about the wine business?
I mean, I think the most important thing about the wine business is that it's an agricultural product, and we remain humble in the face of nature, and to understand where the sort of obligations and respect that needs to be brought to the vineyard at every stage. This takes time, this takes energy, this is not glamorous work. This is cold days out in the cellar, out in the vineyards or out in the cellar. This is not glamorous, but it's a lot of hard work. And so I think there's a misconception that the wine business is somehow very fancy and very glamorous.
Yeah, that's what you would think about the wine business with all the advertising, the champagne, and
I think the things that where the people that have the money to advertise, they're not necessarily making the most authentic wine. That's not always the case. I don't want to generalize more than I should, but like it's not a guarantee of something qualitative.
We've talked about this, educating yourself, knowing where the money goes, and getting the great quality, which supports actually people and communities working for them.
Yeah, and I think talking to people that can teach you, I find it challenging when people like try and recommend a wine, because it's so hard, it's so personal what you like. And so many people say, yeah, I love wine, but I can't tell you what I like. And I'm like, well, the first thing to do is just start remembering, okay, I like that wine and I like that about it, just so you can tell. Well, first of all, do you prefer red or white? That's an easy one. And then do you prefer something, stronger or something lighter? And then do you prefer when there's really fruit, or do you prefer when there's more tannin? And so like the more you sort of think about it, oh yeah, that's what I like. And then then a sommelier or a wine salesperson can help you, find the one you like.
That's a great advice. And what's the best way to getting into the wine business? Is that something that you can build up very quickly, or you see it as a more long-term marathon building
Yeah, I think it's definitely long term. And I think it's also coming back to the growers. When you plant a vineyard, you have to wait really 4 to 7 years before you can make a wine out of it. And so you have to have a vision on the long term. And so you can't just think, oh, I'm just going to do a quick thing. The relationships that work are the relationships that are nurtured over time and that are respected over time. And yeah, and also thinking, we were talking about this, about thinking about, okay, it's easy to make a sale maybe, but making sure that that goes through all the way to the final consumer, because maybe the sale is easy. You wow someone and then they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to take, a huge volume of something. But then is it actually getting to the final consumer and being appreciated and being shared and being drunk?
That's what matters, right?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we're trying to get that agricultural product, the purest expression of it, to the final consumer.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks.